Carlos Nelson with What's Up Worldwide, and on our series on Palestine with voices out of our ecumenical community. Today we have Pastor Ron Lindsay on. Welcome, Ron.
Carlos, thanks so much for having me a part of this conversation.
Thank you. I'd like for you just to give your thoughts on what's going on in the Middle East right now.
Uh, Carlos, I think it is one of the I think it is one of the most tragic, yet one of the most necessary struggles around what does it mean to empower people and the lessons that come out of that we can experience. For me, it's not just understanding it from a historic or a historical perspective. It really is understanding the dynamics, the underlying dynamics that are in play that are really around the valuing of people, the marginalizing of people for economic and social gain, whether that's in the region or outside of the region. That is the geopolitical slant, that is the economic slant around all of this. And so mine is not just from a historic perspective of what happens. There's people who understand that far greater than I do. But if we're going to look at it from what does it mean to leverage our community in a different way and to learn lessons from that, I think that that's the value I extract from that.
As a man of the cloth, how do you view the viciousness in which, and that's the only way I can put it. And I haven't looked at all the footage because it's two sides to every coin. But the footage that I've seen, how they're treating these people, and as I've said in previous interviews, I do a rocket, and then you do a atom bomb on me, and the world looks at it, and they look at you the way they should, but mum is the word.
Yeah. Well, again, now we're talking about how media and how countries leverage moments for their greater good off of the backs of the disenfranchised. This is not an indictment on either of those groups. When you talk about this struggle, you really are talking about a struggle that goes back to the very formation of that continent, the very formation of the human experience over there goes back to Adam, who is the person of promise, who are the people of promise, all of that kind of thing. And so now you have countries that know what some of those tensions are, and they leverage it for their greater good, saying, you're really the people, you're really the person. And so now as the politics come out, the value of one group or over another group becomes more of the issue versus really trying to help the region, but be a healthy place for both of these amazing groups that dwell in that area.
Well, that goes back to the human condition. I was going to be the cutoff king on you because when you said the chosen group, because I believe Black people are the real Jews as far as I'm concerned. And I go into that with that Ptolemaic situation, even when you look at the color of the would-be Arab population. And I'm like, if you're not a student of history or really not a student in general, you don't understand those times. You're thinking in how we live today. But back then, you're talking about the 3rd century when Ptolemy came in and took Egypt over. What did they do with the males in those days? They put them in slavery, they kill them. And over, you talking about from the 3rd century now, you're looking at people that have been mixed with Greeks. And that's where you get that complexion and that hair and all of that from the current Egyptians. But if you don't really understand and are not a student, then you come up with all these fallacies on how things work, and then you move on them.
So I agree with you 100%. That's why I made sure I made a distinction about the region. If you don't understand the region and the geopolitics around the shift in the region, when we talk about the Ottoman Empire and all of these other empires that invaded the area, and now you've got a different demographic that now is starting to dominate the region. And so the look of the region begins to shift. Now you're talking about thousands upon thousands of years now. You're not talking about even decades or hundreds of years. You're talking about thousands.
I'm the cutoff king. Look at the shift in the population in the United States once them race laws stop being enforced, and you see all of these mixed babies that have, and now you're talking about 1,000 years, what that population looks like.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, we're talking about now the browning of America. That is the key phrase, and what a lot of the cultural and social angst that we're having now is around the browning of America. And now we're seeing Latinos come into the country. We're watching Blacks, and then you just mentioned how now you have this merging, and I think the merging of cultures that you see has a lot to do with how hip hop has, and nobody's talking about that, the impact of hip hop on Black community and white community. Now these children are mixing because they're a part of the same social fabric and construct. And so if that happens in America, if we're talking about that happens in America, it absolutely has happened all over the planet. So when we talk about that, and that's one of the reasons why I talked about the geopolitics, or at least mentioned, not talked about, but mentioned the geopolitics in the region that literally shifted everything in the region in terms of what it looked like, what it is, because now you're talking about power and influence. We're talking about when Britain came in, as the Ottoman Empire goes down, now Britain comes in, and now you have another fuse of different races coming in and those kinds of things. So I think your point is well taken with me. I don't push back on that at all. My suggestion is that as the politics develop, that one group is now viewed as more sacred than the other, when that's not the truth, and that's not the case in that narrative at all. That's the only piece that I was trying to raise.
Well, I told you off camera that the spirit knocked me in my head and said, son, you've got this outlet, and you call yourself, you got What's Up Kansas City, but you done ventured into worldwide, and this is what's going on worldwide, and I want you to push back on the narrative. And that's not saying that anybody is the villain. As we talked off camera, that we all come from that same root at different branches. But it seemed like when we go to the different branches, they be trying to bear different fruit. And a peach and an apple and an orange on the same tree, and it's going against the nature of the root. We're one family.
Well, everything is about power. All of this is, I don't have to tell you, Carlos, all of this is about power and control. And it has been historic that those who desire power have to demean and devalue others to be able to subjugate them. That's the story of Western civilization. It is the demeaning of humanity so that I can get a leg up and I dominate the planet in a different way.
I want to be cut off king. I want to be cut off king because I want to switch gears and put that with the conversation I was having with Caldwell. And I think off camera, I talked to you about the demonization of different people. And I said, when I was doing that interview with him, I was scrolling at the same time. And then they got the mayor looking like he was a convict. And I'm like, what the hell are they doing? And then, I thought it was just a person, because you know how the people, they'll put their personal opinion about you, me, or whatever. and I noticed it was sponsored by. So I mentioned that, and somebody said, "Well, who was it?" I was like, "I didn't know." They was like, "You scared to mention?" I'm like, "I'll mention if I knew who it was." So then the last 2 days, now I see they did. Oh boy, they did Rainer Park Shore, and they did Lee Barnes with that same profile. And this is the importance of you having your own media to push back on that, because I'm looking at the news and they say that the Northland Council people don't show up to the city council meeting on this accountability or whatever the Black council people are trying to pass. I don't want to get into it because I don't know that much. But what I know is every time we go to try to get some rights and balance the books, then you have a no-show or you have all this opposition. And then going back to Cascade, our community is not thinking, well, how do we push back? You don't own the media. They're putting out the narrative and they're putting out their point of view to millions of people, and you're not smart enough or whatever, that you're not supporting your media so that you can put your side of the story out with your words.
Yeah. Well, that we talk about leveraging opportunities, and we talk about leveraging money. Well, one of the great pieces that money allows you to do is create media. Well, if we have a outlet like Cascade, and we can figure out, and it's okay if we have not done it to this point. We're at this point now.
That's right.
Life is what it is. You can't complain about what you didn't do. You have to figure out how to move forward. And so for me, one of the issues is, how do we leverage assets in our community to the greater good of all? Not just the greater good of Black folk, greater good of all Kansas Cityans, everyone who's in this region. Because the more educated you become about me and I become about you, and you see the why I think the way that I think, we will find that we have allies that think like we do around an issue. We may not think the same around everything, but around an issue. And so once you begin to create allies that don't look like you and who look like you, and now you leverage the assets that you have, the chances of success are heightened greater than if you don't. Because if you're only telling the narrative about what's going on, then most people won't do the research. Let me put it that way. Won't do the research to really figure it out. But if there are platforms like you have, and they're giving another outlook to it and showing where victories lie in terms of the landscape of the city, the country, the world, then you have people who can think differently around it. And so I think it's exceedingly important that we really rethink, what does it mean to leverage the assets that we have in our community? And we're seeing that. And let's push this back to the Middle East again. Israel is leveraging the assets that they have to leverage what's going on. I'm not vilifying anybody around there. I'm not vilifying them. I'm not vilifying anybody. But the Palestinians don't have those resources. So no one's there to tell their story. And so the world ultimately ends up going off of a different narrative than the narrative that you need to share. Because there's always two sides to the coin, I should say.
Hey, Pastor, in closing, what would your closing words be?
My closing words would be, learn the lessons of what we're seeing. Learn the lessons. Learn to be gentle as doves and wise as serpents, as the word of God would tell us. Learn off of everything that is going on to the greater good of your community. Because as large as the world is, all of these are very small conversations that you see that we're even having now around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it ultimately came back to what's going on in Kansas City.
In Kansas City, in every city.
Yes, sir.
And that's the point why I didn't have this show just on What's Up Kansas City. It's on What's Up Worldwide. It will, you can access it on What's Up Kansas City, but some of the issues that we will be talking about in 2021 are issues that are not only affecting our city and our community, but the worldwide community. And that's why the George Floyd incident struck a nerve. It just didn't strike a nerve here in Kansas City or the US. It struck a nerve around the world because what's going on in their cities with brutal force and is going on in every country and city in the world. In closing, as I always say, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
This program is brought to you by Clark Star Group.